If you are an American and you're thinking about dating a Brazilian, you need to hear this first. Because what starts as the most thrilling, exotic, and unforgettable romance of your life can quickly turn into one of the most complicated, emotionally charged, and exhausting relationships you'll ever experience. Welcome to Cultural Clashes, the channel where we uncover the raw truth about what happens when love crosses borders. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe, drop a comment, and share this video, because after hearing this story, you'll want to tell us, could you survive the dark truth of dating a Brazilian? At first glance, Brazilians are magnetic. They are known for their warmth, charm, sensuality, and vibrant energy. Brazilian women in particular carry a unique blend of confidence, beauty, and playfulness that captures attention everywhere they go. For an American man, dating a Brazilian feels like stepping into a dream. Endless laughter, passionate affection, and nights filled with music and dancing. But beneath this passion lies a darker reality, one that Americans are rarely prepared for. Brazilian culture is shaped by family, jealousy, tradition, and a very different approach to relationships. And when it collides with American independence and freedom, the results can be explosive. Let's imagine a couple. Mark, a 34-year-old American from San Diego, meets Camila, a 26-year-old Brazilian woman from Rio de Janeiro. Their first encounter is like a movie. Mark is blown away by her beauty, her energy, and the way she seems to light up every room. Camila is fascinated by his American humor, his confidence, and his relaxed style. Their chemistry is undeniable. At first, every conversation feels like fire, every date feels like an adventure. But soon the dark truth begins to surface. The first cultural clash is jealousy. In Brazil, jealousy is not only common, it is often seen as a sign of love. Camila expects Mark to care if other men look at her, to get jealous, to show protectiveness. For her, jealousy proves passion. Mark, however, was raised in a culture where jealousy is considered toxic, a weakness. He stays calm, trusts her, and doesn't react. Camila interprets this as lack of care. The more relaxed he is, the more unloved she feels. The more she demands, the more suffocated he feels. What she calls passion, he calls control. What he calls trust, she calls neglect. Family involvement adds another heavy layer. In America, relationships are mostly private between two people. In Brazil, family is central and deeply involved. Camila expects Mark to attend family lunches every weekend, to respect her parents' opinions, and to embrace her extended relatives. At first, Mark enjoys the warmth, the food, and the laughter, but soon he feels overwhelmed. He wants weekends alone, private moments with Camila, and independence. She insists that family comes first. For her, love without family is meaningless. For him, constant family involvement feels suffocating. Intensity of emotions shocks him. Brazilians love with fire. Camila expresses her feelings loudly, passionately, and without holding back. She fights with intensity, cries openly, and shows affection with equal force. For her, if you don't fight, you don't care. For Mark, who is used to calm discussions and rational problem-solving, her intensity feels overwhelming. His calmness, in turn, makes her feel ignored. What she calls love, he calls chaos. What he calls respect, she calls coldness. Social life and parties highlight more differences. Camila expects Mark to go out often. Samba nights, barbecues, family birthdays, and endless gatherings. For her, community and celebration are essential. At first, Mark enjoys the music, the dancing, and the energy, but soon he feels drained. He wants quiet weekends, privacy, and rest. Camila sees his refusal as rejection. He sees her insistence as pressure. What she calls life, he calls exhaustion. Gender roles clash as well. Camila admires Mark's independence, but still expects him to lead, provide, and be generous. In her culture, a man's devotion is proven through action and provision. When Mark suggests splitting bills equally, she feels insulted. For her, that shows weakness. For him, it shows fairness. What he calls equality, she calls immaturity. What she calls devotion, he calls control. Religion and tradition add another dimension. While Brazil is diverse, Catholicism and evangelical Christianity remain powerful. Camilla expects Mark to respect religious holidays, to attend ceremonies, and to embrace tradition. Mark, who is secular, feels pressured. When he cracks a joke about religion, she feels offended. For her, faith is identity. For him, faith is optional. His casualness feels disrespectful. Her devotion feels suffocating. Money and economic differences also play a role. Camilla grew up in a culture where financial stability is tied to security. She expects Mark to demonstrate his seriousness through consistency, planning, and sometimes helping her family. Mark is shocked. He believes financial responsibility should stay between the couple. For her, refusing feels selfish. For him, being asked feels unfair. Even daily habits become points of conflict. Mark wastes food, spends casually, and treats resources lightly. Camilla is horrified. In her culture, where scarcity is familiar, waste is disrespectful. What he calls freedom, she calls irresponsibility. What she calls discipline, he calls rigidity. Communication styles widen the gap. Camilla expects Mark to pick up on unspoken signals, to read her emotions, and to respond with intensity. Mark, however, is straightforward and direct. He takes words literally, missing her hints. She says, "I'm fine," expecting him to push further. He accepts her words. She feels neglected. He feels manipulated. Over time, the relationship grows heavier. Mark feels suffocated by expectations. Family, jealousy, intensity, religion, and responsibility. Camilla feels neglected by his independence, his calmness, and his lack of fire. What once felt like love now feels like conflict. This is the dark truth about dating Brazilians. At first, the beauty, the passion, and the energy are irresistible. But soon, Americans discover that Brazilian love is not light or casual. It is fiery, consuming, and demanding. Americans see love as freedom and individuality. Brazilians see love as passion, loyalty, and sacrifice. Both perspectives are valid, but together they clash. And this is only the beginning. Because as the relationship deepens, the pressure from family, jealousy, and cultural intensity only grows stronger. What once felt like paradise begins to feel like a storm. Stay tuned, because in the next part, we will explore how these cultural clashes escalate when Americans and Brazilians try to build a long-term future together, and why so many of these romances burn bright. But as Mark and Camilla's relationship deepens, the very things that drew them together now begin to drive them apart. The passion, the laughter, the intensity, they are still there, but they now feel heavy, overwhelming, and impossible to control. Mark still admires Camilla's beauty, her energy, and her loyalty, but he feels crushed under expectations he never anticipated. Camilla still values Mark's humor and independence, but she feels constantly let down by his calmness and his lack of fire. The first major breaking point is marriage and commitment. In Brazil, serious relationships are expected to move toward marriage quickly. Camilla's parents begin asking when Mark plans to propose. Her relatives start dropping hints, reminding her that time is precious. Camilla herself begins to pressure him, asking about their future. Mark, however, feels overwhelmed. In his culture, marriage is a personal choice, often delayed until one feels fully ready. For Camilla, waiting too long feels like a waste of time and a sign of disrespect. What he calls freedom, she calls irresponsibility. What she calls commitment, he calls pressure. Family obligations grow even heavier. Camilla expects Mark to treat her parents like his own, to visit often, to help them financially if needed, and to include them in big decisions. When her brother loses his job, she suggests Mark help out. When her parents need repairs in their house, she hints that he should contribute. Mark is stunned. He believes love is about two people, not an entire family. For her, refusing feels cold. For him, being asked feels like exploitation. Jealousy and possessiveness escalate into constant conflict. Camilla grows increasingly suspicious of Mark's female friends, his texts, and his social media activity. She demands reassurance, attention, and visible proof of loyalty. Mark, who values trust and independence, feels accused and suffocated. He argues that love without trust is impossible. Camilla counters that love without passion is meaningless. Their arguments grow fiery, leaving both drained. Social life and partying continue to wear Mark down. Camilla thrives on community, music, and nightlife. She expects him to join her for samba nights, carnival events, and endless gatherings. Mark enjoys some of it, but he soon longs for quiet weekends, privacy, and time alone. Camilla accuses him of being boring. He accuses her of being excessive. What she calls joy, he calls chaos. Religion and values divide them further. Camilla expects Mark to attend church on Sundays, to respect religious holidays, and to embrace rituals. Mark, who is secular, refuses. He participates reluctantly at first, but eventually stops. Camilla feels ashamed in front of her family. For her, faith is culture. For him, faith is optional. His refusal feels disrespectful. Her insistence feels suffocating. Gender roles remain unresolved. Camilla expects Mark to lead, protect, and provide. She measures his seriousness by his financial generosity. Mark insists on equality, splitting bills, and independence. She interprets his behavior as weakness. He interprets hers as outdated. Their love languages do not align. Even daily habits become unbearable. Camilla scolds Mark for wasting food, leaving lights on, or being careless with money. For her, shaped by a culture where scarcity is familiar, waste is shameful. For him, these are small details. Her criticisms make him feel attacked. His casualness makes her feel disrespected. Communication styles push them further apart. Camilla is emotional, loud, and expressive. She fights passionately, raising her voice, crying, demanding resolution. For her, intensity means love. Mark is calm, logical, and reserved. He prefers to wait, to talk rationally, or to walk away. His silence makes her feel ignored. Her fire makes him feel attacked. Their arguments spiral endlessly. As months turn into years, the relationship becomes a battlefield. Mark feels like he is constantly being asked to give up his independence, his calmness, and his freedom. Camilla feels like she is constantly being asked to give up her culture, her family, and her fire. Both feel unloved. Both feel misunderstood. This is the dark truth about dating Brazilians. At first, the passion, the energy, and the beauty are intoxicating. But soon, Americans discover that Brazilian love is not light. It is heavy, jealous, fiery, and consuming. Americans see love as freedom, peace, and individuality. Brazilians see love as passion, loyalty, and sacrifice. Both perspectives are valid, but together, they often collide. Does this mean it's impossible? Not entirely. Some couples succeed. Some Americans adapt, embracing the intensity, the family, and the traditions. Some Brazilians adapt, accepting independence and freedom. But these cases require sacrifice, patience, and compromise on a level most cannot endure. Most romances burn bright, but burn out fast. So should Americans date Brazilians? Only if they are ready to trade independence for family obligations, calmness for intensity, and individuality for passion. Only if they are prepared to accept jealousy, fire, and family involvement as part of the package. Because dating a Brazilian is not just romance. It is stepping into a world where love is fire, family, and loyalty above all else. Unless you are ready to carry that weight, maybe you should think twice before stepping into it. So, what do you think? Would you survive dating a Brazilian, or would the jealousy, the family expectations, and the intensity crush you before love could last? Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to Cultural Clashes, and spread this story. Because when cultures collide, love is never simple. It is always a battlefield between worlds.